In 1 week, he called me like, I have a fight for you. And I started my journey there, and the rest is history.
In the world of combat sports, there are moments that define generations. A perfectly timed punch, a submission no one saw coming, a coronation under the bright lights where one man becomes legend. But every once in a while, something happens that isn't just a victory or a defeat, it's a rupture, a moment when the entire system trembles. Tonight, the world of mixed martial arts has just felt that quake because Ilia Topuria, the undefeated, undisputed two-division UFC world champion, just walked away. Not because he lost, not because of injury or scandal. He left because of something far more dangerous: choice. The moment hit like a thunderclap. Headlines exploded across the globe. Commentators, journalists, fans all scrambling to understand. Dana White's face, red with fury, flashed on every feed. Social media burned with speculation. Ilia Topuria quits the UFC.
This is guy Ilia Topuria, and Ilia Topuria is one of the absolute best fighters in the world.
It sounded impossible, but it was real. The golden boy, the face of a new generation, had turned his back on the empire that built him, and in his wake, he left chaos, controversy, and one burning question that echoed in every corner of the fight world. Why? The answer didn't come from a press release or a staged press conference. It came straight from the source, an Instagram live broadcast to millions of followers. The camera flickered. The belt rested beside him, glinting in the dim light. His voice was calm, his expression unshaken, and then he said the words that would send shockwaves through the industry. The UFC was a cage, not a company. Real fighters deserve real freedom. It was raw, poetic, defiant. He thanked his fans. He spoke of his journey, of the sacrifices, of the pain behind every victory. And when a fan asked if he was vacating his titles, he smiled a knowing, almost rebellious smile and said, "The UFC made me famous, but the PFL will make me free." The feed went black. Within minutes, the MMA world was in meltdown. To understand the magnitude of this, you have to understand who Ilia Topuria is.
First thing I want to say is thank you, God. Everything I have, everything I am, and everything I'm gonna be someday, it comes from Him, so.
I had 4 fights when I started with my professional career.
He wasn't just another champion, he was the UFC's masterpiece. Joe Rogan once called him the most complete fighter on the planet. His highlight reel was a symphony of violence, precision, timing, power. He didn't just beat opponents, he dismantled them. He humiliated the elite strikers, broke submission artists, and conquered entire divisions without ever tasting defeat. The UFC had found their new Conor, their next Khabib, their face of the future. But behind the fame and the triumphs, something darker was brewing. Sources close to Topuria's camp say negotiations after his last title defense turned ugly. The UFC offered him a massive, career-defining deal, but buried in the fine print was something that made him pause. The contract didn't just ask for fights, it asked for ownership. His name, his image, his likeness, his digital rights. They wanted not just the fighter, but the man himself. His response to the lawyers was cold and unforgettable. "I fight men, not paperwork."
If I'm walking in the street with my wife and someone says something to her, I'm not gonna ask him how much is your weight, how much is your reach or height or this or that. Like, I will stay there and I'm gonna take his head off. And this is how I think. Like, this is the fight business. I don't care how much is your weight.
And while the UFC treated it as business, another organization saw it as an opening. The Professional Fighters League, the PFL, had been waiting in the shadows. Building quietly, methodically, they merged with Bellator. They secured billion-dollar funding. They watched the UFC's discontent grow from Ngannou's departure to Nate Diaz's rebellion, and they waited for the right moment. Ilia Topuria Topuria was that moment. The offer they made wasn't just financial, it was ideological. They offered him partnership, creative control, a seat at the table, ownership in PFL Europe, the freedom to box, to brand, to build his empire without permission. $50 million, pay-per-view shares, freedom of choice. Everything the UFC said no to, the PFL said yes. For Ilia, it wasn't just a contract, it was a declaration. His mantra has always been simple: faith and ferocity. He fights with conviction, prays before war, and never compromises who he is.
Listen, I don't think that he's gonna accept it. But if he thinks that he's ready, come on, you blow. Bring that here. If he wants it, bring that. Bring him here. Listen, I don't think that he's gonna accept it. But if he thinks that he's ready, come on, you blow. Bring that here.
Expecting you to say anything, but do you think there's a chance Ilia Topuria could end up on that card? Big star.
It's a possibility.
To him, this wasn't rebellion. It was obedience not to corporations, but to his own code. As he told fans later that night, glory belongs to God, not to contracts. Just a week ago, Dana White was teasing his next fight, a summer mega event headlined by Topuria. Now that same man is fighting to contain a mutiny. For the first time ever, a reigning undefeated UFC champion has defected to a rival promotion. Belts still in hand. It's unprecedented, it's historic. It's a direct challenge to the UFC's dominance and to Dana White's authority. But the cracks have been showing for years. Fighters begging for fair pay, stars walking away, legends being replaced by influencers. Remember when Topuria called out Paddy Pimblett, the fight fans wanted, the fight everyone demanded? The UFC refused, not because of money, but because of market value. They needed to protect their British star. To Ilia, that was the final straw. According to his inner circle, he told his team, the UFC is protecting clowns instead of crowning fighters. The PFL heard him loud and clear, and they moved fast. Their offer wasn't just about dollars, it was about dignity. They promised autonomy. They offered Topuria a role in shaping the future of the sport in Europe and beyond. They wanted him to be more than an athlete. They wanted him to be an architect. Insiders say this is only the beginning. Two other UFC stars, including a former champion, are reportedly in talks to follow him. The walls of Dana's empire are beginning to tremble, and fighters everywhere are watching closely. For years, the UFC's power rested on one simple truth: they make the stars. But Ilia Topuria has just flipped that truth on its head. He's shown the world that the stars can make the sport, and that realization might be the UFC's greatest threat yet. The numbers tell the story. 8 fights, $8 million. That's what the UFC offered. A fortune to most, but a fraction of what he was worth. The PFL countered with an offer 5 times that size, plus equity, plus freedom. For the first time, a fighter wasn't just an employee, he was a shareholder. And the setting for his rebirth? Madrid, the legendary Santiago Bernabeu Stadium, 80,000 seats, the home of Real Madrid, the rumored site of Ilia Topuria's first PFL fighting event so massive it could redefine what MMA can be. Not an arena fight, a global spectacle, the kind of moment that announces a revolution. Behind the scenes, Dana White is furious. Reports suggest an emergency meeting was called at UFC headquarters. Internal memos leaked orders to lock down contracts to prevent another defection. But it might already be too late. The fighters have seen the cracks in the system, and the more they look, the harder they are to ignore. Jake Paul tweeted, Topuria just opened the gates. Francis Ngannou welcomed him to the Club of Freedom. The hashtag number Free the Fighters is trending worldwide. And suddenly, what began as one man's decision is starting to look like the beginning of a movement. Because this isn't just about money, it's about control.
If I'm walking in the street with my wife and someone says something to her, I'm not gonna ask him how much is your weight, how much is your reach or height or this or that. Like, I will stay there and I'm gonna take his head off. And this is how I think. Like, this is the fight business. I don't care how much is you weigh.
For decades, fighters have been told there's only one path to glory, one cage, one brand, one king. The UFC built its empire on that belief. But tonight, Ilia Topuria shattered it. He reminded every fighter, every fan, and every executive that true greatness doesn't need permission. It doesn't need contracts or corporate approval. It only needs courage. In one of his old interviews, he said it best. I'm not going to ask him how much is your weight. I will stay there and I'm going to take his head off. This is the fight business. That raw, fearless honesty, that refusal to play the game is exactly what made him a star. And now, it's what's making him dangerous. As the dust settles, one truth remains. The future of MMA is no longer certain. The UFC's reign isn't over, but it's no longer unchallenged. The war for the soul of the sport has begun not between fighters, but between ideals, between control and freedom, between the cage and the open road, and at the center of it all stands one man, a champion who refused to be owned. Ilia Topuria didn't just leave the UFC, he didn't just change promotions. He may have changed the game forever. The revolution has begun.